I don't know about you, but I am not going anywhere on Valentine's Day. I hate going out to a restaurant on major holidays because it's just so crowded and parking is just ridiculous. And that's why I'm staying home and making ourselves a 4-course steak dinner. So this is a super simple menu. I'm not using anything that's crazy hard to find. It's all ingredients that I already have in my fridge and I'm trying to move them out so I could buy more groceries. All you really need is a really good quality piece of steak and you're good to go. Everything is really simple and they can all be done within the same day, and it's definitely going to impress your partner. And even if you're single, who cares? Just buy yourself a good steak and make yourself some really nice dinner because you deserve it. And it feels like 2020 is happening again, so you might as well just stay home too. Enough said, let's get to cooking. Alright, we're starting off with something that takes the longest and can be done ahead of time, and that is this Brandy chocolate mousse because it needs time to set in the fridge. You'll need some semi-sweet chocolate chips, but feel free to go darker or even milk chocolate chips if you like. Any pot with boiling water, place a bowl on top, but the bowl needs to not touch the water directly, then dump in the chocolate. This is called the bain-marie, in case anyone was wondering. Stir the chocolate until it is completely melted. You can also do this in the microwave. Set that aside and let it cool completely, and we're gonna make some whipped cream next. In a stand mixer bowl, combine 1 cup of heavy cream with 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Use the whisk attachment and whip the cream until it resembles a very soft shaving cream. Stop the mixer and add in 3 tablespoons of brandy. You can also do rum or bourbon or even coffee if you don't want any alcohol. Continue mixing until the whipped cream looks like this. You want to set aside about 3/4 cups of the whipped cream because we're gonna use it to top the chocolate mousse later. Now back to the chocolate. Take a little bit of that whipped cream and combine it with the melted chocolate. This will lighten the texture of the chocolate and make it easier to combine it with the rest of the whipped cream. Add the chocolate mixture to the rest of the cream and gently fold the two together using a spatula. Make sure you don't overmix it, otherwise it'll lose too much air bubbles and it'll become really dense. We want light and airy chocolate mousse here. Divide the chocolate mousse into 2 cups and smooth out the top, then cover them up and chill them in the fridge for at least 2 hours, and we'll come back to finish them later. For the appetizer, we're making a really pretty rustic puff pastry tomato tart. Inside this bowl, I have about 4 ounces of softened cream cheese. I'm going to season it with some salt and pepper, then add about 2 tablespoons of store-bought pesto. And optionally, for a little heat, I'm adding a few shakes of chili flakes. Go ahead and mix it up until the pesto is well incorporated. For the star of this dish, I'm using these beautiful heirloom tomatoes, but you can certainly use other types of tomatoes like these or these. Use a super sharp knife and slice the tomatoes into thin slices. Now take a sheet of store-bought puff pastry that's already been thawed out and place it on the sheet tray that's been lined with parchment paper. Use a paring knife to score the edges, but make sure you don't cut it all the way through. Now take all that pesto cream cheese and smear it on top of the pastry, and you want to try to spread it out as evenly as possible and be sure to leave out the borders, which we have scored. And take the beautiful slices of tomato and arrange them nicely on the puff pastry. Season them with some salt and pepper and top with some fresh herbs such as thyme and a little drizzle of olive oil. Pop it in the oven that's been preheated to 425 degrees Fahrenheit and bake for about 20 to 25 minutes or until the puff pastry is brown and the tomatoes are slightly caramelized. That looks beautiful. To go with our main course of the day, that big hunk of steak, we're going to make a Brussels sprout Caesar salad with harissa croutons. To make the croutons, combine a 1/4 cup of olive oil, salt and pepper, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1 teaspoon of harissa chili paste. If you can't find this stuff, you can substitute it with some sambal oleg, or if you don't like the heat, just leave it out. This is the bread I'm using. It's a rustic sesame bread that I made a while ago. I think the sesame seeds add a really nice toasty note to the croutons, but plain ones are totally fine. Coat the bread pieces in the harissa olive oil and bake them in a preheated 325 degrees Fahrenheit oven for about 25 minutes or until they're dried and crunchy. Let's make the dressing next. I have some CONFIT garlic here. I'm gonna use maybe like 5 cloves. By the way, I do have a video on how to make them. You should go check it out. To the garlic, add 3 fillets of anchovy and smash them together with a fork until it turns into a paste. A little bit of coarse salt will help the process. Zest and juice 1 lemon, then add 2 tablespoons of mayo, 3/4 cups of Greek yogurt, and yes, this is a healthier version of Caesar dressing, but it's still super delicious. Some black pepper, 1 teaspoon of Worcestershire, and finally 3 tablespoons of ground Parmesan. Stir everything together and that's the dressing. Wash and rinse about 1 pound of Brussels sprouts and remove any outer layers that are yellow and kind of yucky looking, then slice them up thinly. And believe it or not, we're pretty much halfway done with prepping the meal. We got the dessert, the appetizer, and the salad components are all good to go. All that's left to do is to put them together after the steak. What's a romantic Valentine's dinner without steak? I'm saving this last because the steak needs to be served right after it's seared. And this right here is nothing fancy like a grass-fed dry-aged or A5 Wagyu, but it's still a pretty damn good USDA choice-grade ribeye steak. For the method we're doing today, which is called the reverse sear, you want to pick something that's really big and thick like this one. And make sure you take it out 45 minutes to an hour prior to cooking it. Place the steak on a rack over a sheet tray and season it generously with some salt and pepper. Make sure the sides are getting seasoned as well. For the reverse sear method, you won't need a probe thermometer like this one. This one is only like 18 bucks on Amazon and it is a super useful kitchen tool to have. If you don't have one, a regular digital one will work just as fine. Insert the probe in the thickest part of the steak and set it to 115 Fahrenheit. For medium rare steak, the internal temperature should be around 130, but since we will be basting the steak later, you want to have a little wiggle room so the steak doesn't get overcooked. Pop the steak in an oven that's preheated to 250 degrees Fahrenheit and bake until it's reached a set temperature, which will take about 40 to 45 minutes if your steak was at room temperature. Then remove it from the oven and yes, I know it doesn't look very appetizing right now because it's all gray and zombie looking. That's why we're searing it on high heat next. Grease a cast iron or stainless steel skillet with some high smoke point oil or fat. Open up the windows and when the skillet is screaming hot, drop in the steak and sear both sides for about 1.5 minutes per side. Look at that beautiful golden crust. Throw in some herbs like thyme and rosemary and a couple tablespoons of butter and start basting the steak for about 2 to 3 minutes. Feel free to throw in a couple cloves of garlic here. I'm slapping some garlic compound butter on my steak later, so I'm holding off the garlic. Remove the steak from the pan and let it rest for 10 to 12 minutes while we finish up all the other dishes. Let's start with the salad. I mean, this part is super easy and super simple. It's pretty self-explanatory. Just toss the Brussels and dressing together, plate it up. If you want it to look elegant, make it tall like a pyramid instead of just like a big pile of greens, and finish it off with some of that super crispy harissa croutons, and that is a super simple but delicious salad. Next, cut the tomato tart into whatever size you want it to be, and this is a restaurant habit of mine. I like to set a piece of parchment paper down on the plate before I plate the appetizer. I just think it looks nicer, and since this is a Valentine's dinner, why not put in a little extra effort? It's something small like this that shows that you care. Back to the chocolate mousse. Optionally, drizzle the top with some caramel sauce. Store-bought is totally fine. I just sound like I know Garden, or any other dessert sauce you want. And for some textural contrast, I'm also adding a little bit of crushed up peanuts. This is literally just crushed up peanuts mixed with some sugar and salt. Anything that's crunchy or crispy like graham crackers will be really nice too. And remember that whipped cream that we saved earlier? We're gonna make it look really fancy. Take a large soup spoon that's been soaked in hot water, push it outward, turn the spoon around and drag it back towards you, and you'll get this really beautiful quenelle, which will make your partner think you're really fancy. And finally, to finish the chocolate mousse, a little shavings of chocolate on top of the quenelle of whipped cream, and tell me that's not a perfect Valentine's dessert that will impress anyone. And finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's slice up the steak. I'm gonna remove the cap and slice that up separately, and let's see what the steak looks like on the inside. And yup, that is what I called perfection. Guys, this is how you trap your partner, okay? With a beautiful piece of steak like this. I got some garlic and herb compound butter that I made in my garlic video. Again, make sure you go check out that video. I've been wanting to use this on a really good ribeye, and now the time has finally come. But before we do that, we gotta drizzle the steak with some of that butter and juice that's left in the pan, and then we can go ahead and slap that compound butter on top, and that is a gorgeous 4-course steak dinner for Valentine's Day.
Whoa.
Oh my god. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and make sure you make this for your partner. And once again, even if you're single, you should still make this because you deserve it. Happy Valentine's Day, cheers, and we'll see you back in the kitchen next time.